So what I really wanted to talk about today, sort of related to this, I wanted to talk about when the decision is made to adapt something or create a either on like an on-screen adaptation of something, whether that's TV or film. Um, and the question I really want to ask is, does the ending always matter? So this sort of has to relate with Star Wars, obviously, in that, like you said, people do enjoy those movies. Whether there was a through line or not, or it was just flying by the seat of their pants, which we know um, they were still movies that got made and were successful by any metric. They all have high critic scores, and they all have, financial success that's, only rivaled by maybe like the Marvel movies. So there's that. They're successful. But, by fans, they're not as adored as previous entries in that franchise are. But what I really am interested in is, let's talk about Game of Thrones, which we bring up a lot. Luca, we know your feelings. Okay, well, I'm interested in yours as well, Rubar. But we know, Luca, your feelings towards the back half of the series, especially the final, I think, 3 seasons.
Two, definitely 3.
Two, definitely.
Okay. So
yeah.
I always say, why did they begin adapting Game of Thrones before they knew how it ended? And the response is always, well, they thought it would have ended in time, but they didn't know.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But then I thought a lot of things get started to be adapted before they're finished. Harry Potter is another example. And then we have the classic examples where that's not the case. Things like Lord of the Rings, the Wheel of Time adaptation that's coming out. Those are completed series. And so there are people out there who have read those properties who know how they end. So I guess I'm struggling to see like when it's not a good idea to adapt something based off the ending. But that made me think, does the ending matter? Because every time we read a book for our rumination, Luca, we go, I would love to see this as a series. And most of the books we read, with I think the exception of Sword of Kaigen, are not like singular self-contained stories.
Yeah.
But every entry into a series sort of is a self-contained story. So I'm just wondering what you guys' thoughts are. Does the ending of a series on screen actually matter, or is the journey of how to get there more important? If we have 5 or 4 good seasons of Game of Thrones, do the last 2 or 3 really discredit everything we've got up to there? And, if we have 6 or 3 debatable good movies of Star Wars, do the next 3 matter? I know how I feel about it, but Rubar, what are your thoughts?
For me, it's almost like writing a really good essay and not having a conclusion, and you're just leaving it open-ended. And it's like, or it's not what you expected. So like you write an entire essay about your topic or whatever, and then you have to like finalize it and like kind of recollect everything and put closure to it. And if you don't deliver on that, it almost discredits your essay as well, like your body paragraphs kind of thing. So I do think it all ties in together. It definitely changes my perspective on the series before, like the seasons before and stuff. To say Game of Thrones is now a shit TV show or because of the ending and stuff, no. Like I could rewatch the first 6 seasons and just restart and still like love it as much kind of thing. But I like deep down in the back of my mind, I'm like, they could have done so much better. Like it's just angering to an extent where I'm like all they had to do was just like watch it before they released it, and they would have realized how bad it would have been and like how rushed it felt kind of thing. It's like, if the producers were rushed to finish it, like, am I over romanticizing my love for this TV show?
I see. Like the love that you have for it, you feel was not reciprocated on the creator's end.
Yeah, like,
yeah, fair enough.
Like if I mean, obviously you have to love the plot and like as a producer of it, hopefully they love it more than I do or more than anybody does, but it like the last 2 seasons, it almost felt like they were tired of it, and they're like, let's just put an end to it and hope for the best. And that's kind of discredits the producers and stuff, but it doesn't take away from the show for me. Definitely not up to the 5-6 seasons that were really good.
Mm-hmm.
Just like The Office, like when Michael Scott left, it like kind of died down. So even when I rewatch The Office, it's like season 1 to 7 restart, season 1 to 7 restart.
So yeah, okay. Here's the thing: I do the exact same thing. I've never seen any Office material where Michael's like. I think I've seen like where Will Ferrell comes in, and then
season 7.
Yeah, I think
or season 7.
Jim becomes the boss for a while, and then I stop watching and I start from the beginning. So I don't have the same feel. Like I very much live in this false reality where that is the only storyline. I've never finished it. And anytime I attempt to, I just get like bored, and then I stop watching it, and then I go, I should start watching The Office again, and start like I'm in this weird fucking feedback loop.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at with it as well. And like same with like Game of Thrones and stuff. Like if I were to rewatch it, like I think I would just stop at season 6 or wherever there was, and just kind of like let my fantasy make the ending for me and just restart the thing, kind of thing.
Wow.
So like even in The Office, like even when Michael's not there, it almost feels like he's there right now for me. Even like rewatching it, it's like like I create these like different little like settings that he'd be in, kind of thing. So no, I definitely does affect the series, like a show or a movie with a great ending, like even like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I mean, I think
The
like
Return
for
of the
Game
King,
of Thrones, yeah, of course, like great ending, but like for Game of Thrones,
of closure.
Yeah, exactly.
I just felt like when TV shows or movies miss that closure, it's like you're not satisfied with the entire series. It almost feels unfinished, or like.
But sometimes it feels like that's the point.
Yeah, but like, with Game of Thrones, it so clearly isn't.
Yeah, for Game of Thrones, they really went
so
for
clearly isn't. That's the issue.
You know,
Return
like
of the
issue
King
with
finish.
The issue with Game of Thrones is like it's so obvious when they lose the source material, because the writing just goes from like some of the best TV ever made to just average, like watchable, average, kind of entertaining. Like do you guys remember how much dialogue there was in seasons 1 through 4? Like there was
way
no
too much
action.
like you'd have to write down notes to be able to keep up.
Like there was just constant conversation. Like every scene was like conversation, building the world, like the dynamic between the characters, to get to like season 6 and 7 where it was just like, here's a moment. They're just like hitting you with like, this is like Jon Snow reuniting with Arya. Like, okay, now let's move on. Like it honestly felt like contemptuously written. Like, like it was just, there was just no respect for the source material. Like they took zero risks.
And that's
the ending. It was just, and then again, like I still haven't rewatched Game of Thrones. Like I've not gone back to rewatch it because there's no point.
Same.
Like I'll watch.
See, that's my thing though, is because let's say Game of Thrones completely shut down operations after they lost the source material and waited. Do you think you would have rewatched it then? Like, would you do like, let's say it took 10 years for him to finish writing and they paused all production. This would never happen, by the way. But let's just say in this, fantasy world that did happen. Would your feelings towards it be different, or would you still be like, the ending is not resolved, so I don't want to watch it?
Personally, no. Like, I think I would rewatch it more if the ending wasn't there.
Me too.
Because I think I'm like angered towards the fact that, because now there is a conclusion to it, and there was
one that's not satisfying,
and it was so ass. Like they could have ended it on season 6, like without actually finishing the show, and I think it would have been better. And then we could have
they could have literally ended it where Jon Snow died.
We would have been more angry at the fact that it wasn't fit, or we wouldn't have been as angry at the point that they didn't finish the series than them finishing it wrong, kind of thing.
Oh wow, that's interesting, because you guys know like The Sopranos. I've never actually seen the show, but the ending of it is sort of infamous in that it sort of just cuts mid conversation. You don't really get to see what happens. And I know like the following year since it's come out, people have sort of been more open to that idea of being like, we had like a very small window into this person's life, and then the window closed, and that's the end. So I sort of feel that way, where like you're saying, if they would have just like stopped it, right, it may, like, you may be angry that it never resumed, but you still get to keep that happy little, 4 to 5 seasons.
That those respectable moments where you're like, oh, they didn't ruin the show. They just stopped it.
I guess it's sort of like a relationship, right? Like if your relationship ends poorly, you don't look back with fond memories on the good times. You just go, I can't believe that person hurt me in this way.
Yeah,
right?
every time they didn't do something for you, or all the negatives come up.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, oh, fucking idiot. She wasn't even a good cleaner. She smiled weird.
Yeah, no, but I think it's weird, like, to contextualize it that way, but it really is like a relationship you have with this thing you're consuming all the time. So when it ends poorly, I guess it's fair to be like, I can't look at the beginning the same anymore. Like, it's all.
But there's also like, why did it end poorly? Like, you can go back and listen to the interviews of the two producers, like Dan and Dan, or like D and D, like those guys. Like when you listen to them talk about, it's like, it's insulting. Like there's like that interview where it's like, oh, like, the scene where they said like, oh, Danny forgot about the entire Iron Fleet. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're actually gonna write this and then say that out loud? Like, what do you like, why? Yeah. And then they lost Star Wars because like that's why they tried to wrap it up, because they wanted to do Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then do you know what the next film they made after? It was Gemini Man, another garbage film.
Oh, are they involved in that?
Yeah, they were the producers of Gemini Man.
Oh.
Like, it just like, if had they been like very open about like the difficulty of writing this and being like, we're trying to wrap this series that a lot of people love in like a respectable way, and then like, sure, if it missed a bit, like if you had seen the fact that they're actually trying to like do it justice, they're like, we don't have source material, we need to finish the series, like we're gonna do our best to like keep the energy of the show up until like this point.
So here's one thing though, is because I think at first, like season 5, they definitely were like, I think that was their approach, but I think they were getting such pushback from George on, providing them with what was next, because he was, I might be messing a little bit of the timeline up, but he was sort of adamant in that he wanted to finish the book. But he wasn't doing it at the timeline they had initially thought. And since then, he's actually, put the books on hiatus again and said he's working on other Game of Thrones adaptation series. I can't remember what they're called, but they're basically to deal with I think the House of the Dragon deals with like the Targaryens.
Deal with all the information that they missed in the TV show. They're like, he's like, let me just clear shit up with these tangents.
But like, he was very, he pushed back against them getting the information they needed. And so it came to a certain point where they were sort of just on their own. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I think is where they sort of got frustrated and were like, we want to be done with this, because this is not what we signed up for. And we feel like we're being set up to fail, essentially, as he sort of left them on the line. And they're not writers, like, at least as far as I know, they're producers, right? They're showrunners. So I think for them, it was sort of like, we'll do the best we can, but like, this is not what we signed up for. So you'll get what you get, type of thing.
I get that. Like, and I don't know the details of like how much information he was willing to give them or not. Like, I get even from his perspective, not wanting to tell them what his idea for the ending is, because he wants to put it in a book first.
I was going to say, like, I think I have like a theory that he still wants the books to do really well. And that's why he like,
I mean, if he even releases the books ever, like
before he fucking dies.
I think, like, now he has the benefit of being like, okay, that didn't work in the show. If you do something else.
But I mean, there's like, no way that anything that happened in the show was his idea. Like that's not his like it's such weak writing. Like, honestly, like the moments were so weak. Like what, like, can you remember any impactful moment of the entire season 8, like the entire finale? Like, I can't remember a single moment that hit hard.
I think the last episode is fine.
No, it isn't. It's terrible. Like, the conclusion.
Disagree. But
how are you going to make Braun the what is it, the Minister of Coin, like
yeah. So no,
like
okay,
that, like those kinds of like contemptuous decisions, you know, like that's what I'm talking about. Like,
yeah, no, you're right.
So like I honestly can't think of a single moment that like hit hard. I really can't. I can't think of a single moment that stayed with me other than being like, wow, that was really stupid.
Yeah, I think like the last season just turned into like greatest hits. Like,
but like not even greatest hits. Like, what was a great hit? Like, I can't think
it was
of
sort of like fan service in the way that's like we want all these cool things to happen, but they sort of didn't earn them. It was
but
like,
what
yeah,
cool things
Arya will
happened?
kill the Night Lord, and like, but that was it.
That's
like,
not her arc, even. Like,
I know, yeah.
Like, that's not even her arc. Why would she be the one to kill him? And like, why are you gonna build this villain up all this time to end it in a second? Be like, okay, well now what? And then it's like, okay, now it's Cersei, and then she dies by rocks. Like, okay, cool.
I think
Okay,
the
the
only
best part of-
satisfying,
Sorry,
the
go
only
ahead, Rob.
satisfying was when the Hound fought the Mountain.
Yeah,
that was, but even that
I-
felt like a Marvel movie more than Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
Like, do you
but I think
remember Oberyn
that was probably
Tyrell
the only
versus
part
the
where I was like,
Mountain?
okay, they actually like went for it. Like I did want to see this, but like
Yeah, you're right. You're
they
right.
didn't
But like,
I don't think they delivered on the scene itself. I think it was
Mhm.
more so delivered on the actual plot being delivered. You know,
exactly. We've been waiting for that confrontation.
So,
But
yeah,
it still didn't feel like as impactful. Like, do you remember Oberyn versus the Mountain?
yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
That was like an entire episode of just
exactly.
like, yeah,
Like those,
that
like
was-
you remember Joffrey's death, you remember the Red Wedding, you remember Jon Snow being stabbed by the Night's Watch. Like, these are the moments you remember.
and fucking Arya goes through this entire training of becoming a faceless little idiot
Yeah.
just to fucking show up in the last 5 seconds and use it and then be done with it. I'm like you guys spent like 2 seasons literally haunting our feelings to see what's gonna happen with this girl. She turned into this fucking insane person just to be put in a 5-second scene. Like not even kill what's his name?
The Night King.
No, it wasn't even that. No, she didn't even she wasn't even faceless for that.
The guy, the Bridge Lord guy.
The Red Wedding guy.
Yeah, the phrase.
The Frey,
Yeah,
Walter Frey.
Yeah. They just literally put that in that scene, and that's all she trained for, was to kill that guy and dress as his little maid and be done with it, and just never use it again.
So
it's like,
okay.
When she went to go kill the
Night King.
what's his name? Yeah, the Night King. I was like, oh, she's gonna like turn into one of them, you know? Like she's gonna be like I was looking to his sides. I was like, is there like a different movement, like a different like facial expression? I was like, one of them has to be Arya. And all I see is her fucking jumping off the roof. And I'm like, oh, she trained for literally like 5 seconds of a scene.
I guess she does the faceless thing against Littlefinger as well, though, right? That's part of that arc.
No, Littlefinger's executed in front of her without a her normal face.
Oh, but yeah, never mind. Sansa discovers she has like masks in her suitcase or something. Yeah. Anyway, okay, hang on. Let's reel it in. So we have all our feelings about Game of Thrones. I'm gonna retract what I said a bit. I don't think the last episode's fine, but there's parts of it that I did enjoy. And then Luca, we watched it together actually, and I think you remember my reaction was mostly like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But since living with it for years now, I'm not as angry about it. I've sort of like let it breathe. And I think at some point I might rewatch the last season just to confirm my feelings about it. However, bringing this back into the topic here, is it wrong then for us to say things like, I would love to see this first book of this trilogy as an adaptation? If I don't know how it ends, I can't be sure that it won't upset me. And I'm setting myself up for failure by manifesting it into the world. Is that a rational thing that people should think, or am I insane?
No, I think you're right, because you have the issue of the reason Game of Thrones had to end was because of like the logistics of filming a TV show. Like they needed the contracts, they needed the actors to be free, they needed all these things to be set up. Plus, I mean, to be fair, George Martin was releasing books every 2 years when they started. and then like all of a sudden it's been like
Every 8
13,
years.
14 years and he hasn't released a single. I mean, that's not true. He's released books. He released an entire trilogy of Game of Thrones novels just about the Targaryens, like in that same time. Honestly, I think he's scared to finish them. I don't think he knows how he wants to end them. Like I've heard a couple of interviews of him talking about like how this project has sort of ballooned beyond his original expectations. And I don't know that he even has an ending in his head. Like, because he said, I know in 2019 he said that if the Winds of Winter isn't out by June 2020, like his fans can like lock him up in a cabin until he finishes it. Like that was like a quote he said, like I'll be ready by like June 2020. It's like it's October 2021. And there's not even like well, exactly. The pandemic was a perfect time to be writing.
Theories on how the pandemic would end.
So
that's a very good point.
For example, Matt, we love the Rage of Dragons and the Burning series.
Correct.
It's a planned 4 novels. I would not want to see an adaptation started until at least the 3rd one is out.
Right.
Like until it's like 3rd one's out, we know the 4th is coming out in like 2 years or whatever it might be. And like now you start it. So like we'll have 2-3 years of show or movies coming out with like actors locked into contracts. By the time those are done, 4th book is out, series is over, and they can just adapt it. But then like having an ending to a series isn't a guarantee of a good adaptation. Also,
that's very true. 100%. Like even like Aragon. Yeah. But I just like, I think having no ending is another way it can go wrong.
Yeah.
Like I can't remember who said this, but something that's repeated often in Hollywood is a movie is trying to be bad at every step of the way. And it's your job as the filmmakers to make it not bad. Like it is actively trying to be, and your only job is to make sure that it doesn't succeed. And I think that is just giving a big way that it can make itself bad, as if you don't know how it ends. So you're setting up all these things that should play as foreshadowing, should be callbacks when you realize how the ending happens, should be, oh, I should have realized. And then on subsequent viewing of the film, you're like, this is a beautiful way that they put this all together without, spelling it out to you. But when you don't have an ending, you don't know to put those things in. And so when you get to the ending, it was like, well, that came out of fucking nowhere. Why is Bran the king? Like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, but
honestly, honestly, like what they did with the ending with all the roles and all of that didn't really bother me. Like, it made sense that Jon Snow was going to go back to the wall and blah blah blah. It's more so they set themselves up with all these conversations and these little tangents that they went in from season 1 to 6 that they never tapped into in season 7 and 8. It's like a lot of those stories just died down or just never were even like mentioned, and it just left certain parts open-ended, or like not even open-ended, just unfinished, and then finished the series off. I'm like, you guys could have done it, and they had the option to make it longer. That's what pisses me off.
Yeah,
like,
HBO
they had the option. They're
them.
like, HBO offered them 12 episodes, and they're like, well, we'll do it in like 7 or 8 or whatever.
Yeah, it was 7 episodes, I think.
And it's like, oh, like you guys could have actually like tapped into each conversation and been like, sure, it'll feel rushed, but at least there's some closure to every part of it. Whereas like they're like, oh, now it's just done, and like everybody is happy. And yeah, this entire season, this entire episode on one conversation just dissipated into nothing because we decided to rush it. Like they could have even been like, okay, this led to this, or like this conversation ended like this. Fuck, what's that bald guy's name? I haven't even looked into Game of Thrones. Yeah, like Varys' entire story was just like ignored. It was just like rushed
abruptly.
Yeah, and I was just like, what? Like the guy had a finger in literally every single scene and every single setting, and he just became a little nobody at the end.
Like I think my sort of feelings again towards that last season is more so the execution fails. I think all the places the characters end up, with the exception of Bronn being the master of coin, that's just dumb. But where all the other characters end up, I'm mostly okay with. There's none of them where I was like, that was a dumb decision. I just wish they had more time to explain and, sort of hint towards why that could be. Like,
yeah, not just show Jon Snow for 5 seconds going towards going
Yeah,
towards the
but
wall.
I think it would have been better to show like Jon Snow coming back into the world in King's Landing and Winterfell and everywhere, and
Yeah.
feeling like an outsider. That would have
Yeah.
made sense by the end of the season why he returns, not
Like a
just
background
because he's
story
killed
to
Daenerys.
why they ended up going there.
Yeah,
Not just being like, okay, so here we're gonna spawn him and fucking
Yeah. And then
Yeah,
like
it's-
Varys makes sense. Like you say, he had a hand in everything, but like eventually you can't, there's no more cards left to play. And so he loses. That makes sense. Like to say out loud makes sense, but like the way
it doesn't. That's not how he ended. He ended just by being like, he questioned Daenerys and she executes him. Like that's not like, the thing is, none of the characters are themselves anymore. Like the story itself doesn't feel like a Song of Ice and Fire at all. Like seasons 1 through 5 are grimdark. Yeah. Like when the show started, everybody's like, yeah, Ned's going to be king. Nah, he's going to get his head chopped off at the end of season 1. Like his story is over. Like that's what Game of Thrones was. And now it's like, oh, so Jon Snow survives. Like all the main characters. How is Bronn going to survive? Come on. Like, like how are all these people like having happy endings?
I mean, the little kid in me was happy that nobody died, obviously. But that's all Game of Thrones. That's all Game of Thrones was built on.
Right.
Like
but I think
to be honest anymore.
I think they tapped into a big enough crowd where they're like we might have to like lay off the dark shit and like make people happy.
No, I think when there was still the source material, they could go off the source material, which like you're saying, Luca, was grimdark. But then when they ran out of that, it was like, how do we make a modern story? Well, what does Marvel do? Like, not to say like they copied Marvel, but like that is very modern storytelling in that everything works out in the end and everyone leaves.
Please everybody kind of thing.
That's why it's not satisfying, because that's not Game of Thrones. Like that's not the story they started to tell.
That wasn't why people fell in love with the show. It was like,
that's why I'm saying it's so contemptuously written, because it doesn't respect what it was. Like it doesn't respect the source material or the characters or the people who put doesn't respect the actors who created those characters, like brought them to life. It doesn't respect anybody. Like
I wouldn't say it's contempt. I would say it's like the showrunners and producers weren't aware of why the show was successful. Like, or at least their interpretation of it was different. It was like, oh, this, no one's ever done a period fantasy series that's been this successful. This is why people love it. It's Lord of the Rings as a TV show. And it's not. It was very much not a fantasy TV show. The fantasy aspect of it was strictly setting, and everything else was like a political thriller, or it was more to do with the characters. Like the setting was sort of, it just took the background. Nothing really magical happens in the show apart from the children of the forest and Bran. So I don't know. I just think they didn't know what they had. And I think it's the same thing we were talking about with Star Wars. When you have people who are running it, who aren't passionate about it, they can't really quantify what actually makes this successful. So they just go, you like Chewbacca, right? And you like Han Solo, and you like Luke, and you like Leia. Like, here they are again. Oh, you like the Empire and Death Stars, right? Here we go. And it's like, yeah, but not quite. We don't want the same thing over and over. And I think at the end of Game of Thrones, they were just like, yeah, you like this period piece, right? And you like people killing each other. Well, here they all are.
But even that, it wasn't like they shied away from
characters to survive, because now we have the show is so popular. We have to tap into like everybody's feelings and make sure that they're not upset about Arya dying. I was like, either Arya's dying or Jon Snow. Like one of them has to die.
They both should have died.
Yeah, and they're here holding hands, walking to fucking Winterfell together. I'm just like, what? Like, exactly. How does that make sense?
But that's what I mean when I say contemptuous. Like they didn't take into consideration what they were making, like what the story is, what the source material is.
From literally episode 1, Arya and Jon Snow were separated, and there were so many times where they almost met and it just never worked out. And then they're meeting in fucking season 7 or 8 or whatever it was. I don't even fully remember how they met, to be honest. I just remember being like, it wasn't
a moment. Like it was just like,
I just remember being like, that's it. I imagined them like bawling, like hitting each other of like the emotions, because like that was her guy. Like, like they were, the first episode he taught her how to like shoot a bow and shit. Like their interaction was just like such a letdown. And I was like, wow, like I'm more emotional than they are. Like here, like I was anticipating way more. Like maybe that's a fault on me or like on us kind of thing. Cause maybe
it's on them because they didn't live up to the moments.
They
And
didn't
like,
deliver.
and it was also cowardly written because they didn't take a single risk. Like
Yeah.
there was nothing, there's no major moments. And then like even the one sort of like major character death, like Miss Sande being killed, like the way that happened is like a far shot, and then like as soon as like the sword swings, we cut away to Grey Worm's reaction. Like that's not Game of Thrones. We saw Oberyn Tyrell's head get smashed, and then his wife go, "Ah!" Like, do you remember? Like that was Game of Thrones.
That's grimdark. That's brutalist, and that's
exactly,
real.
and that's what that story was supposed to be.
I can see what you're saying. So I think from this conversation, I have learned that endings do matter. And maybe but also I still sort of hold true to that idea that like it's not always the destination, it's the journey. But when the destination fucking sucks, it makes the journey kind of a headache as well. You might not take the journey again. And that's fair, I think.
Oh, and speaking of bad journeys, Star Wars Episode 9 was bad from start to finish.
Oh, well, okay.
We'll save that for
another
day, sure. But like, yeah, like I watched that movie in theaters and I was like the whole time I was just like head shaking. I was like, wow, this is just garbage. I hate this so much.
I'm excited to get into that at some point because I disagree, but I see where you're coming from.
And when we decide to do it, I will rewatch it and I will take copious notes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can.
I will watch it for the first time and I'll be in the comment box.
So let's get into our main topic here, which we've broached quite a bit in both of these opening segments. But again, we're talking about fiction versus fantasy. So Luca, when we were talking about this